And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome in the CEO of Cognition Therapeutics, Lisa Ricciardi. It's fantastic to be with you today, Lisa.
Dan, thank you. I love your energy. What a way to start.
Too kind. And as Ryan said, I was the inventor of April Fool's prank. So everyone, you can blame me. Lisa, let's start with this. Give us an overview of your company and a recap of the data from those two trials that Cognition reported in 2024.
Happy to. So Cognition Therapeutics focuses on neurodegenerative diseases. We started this company as scientists, neuroscientists, and a chemist, and they said, what is it that we can do to protect neurons from Alzheimer's disease? Fast forward 5 phase 2 trials later, here we have 2 great studies that read out. Let me add, we've raised close to $200 million in non-dilutive funding, Dan, and I always say to investors, you want to know what lean looks like, come talk to us. We have 25 people, 7 PhDs, MDs. This is a tiny organization that are delivering the goods here. The trials that read out, the most recent one is called Shimmer, and it's in Lewy body dementia. And for people who don't know, it is such a complicated condition. The first thing you see are behavioral problems or disorders, hallucinations, aggressions, delusions, things of this nature. And the caregivers, our doctors will say to us, a little 85-year-old woman comes in with her 85-year-old husband. She can't take care of an aggressive person who's having delusions. Right. So that's the first thing. Cognitive problems, very significant. Motor function. These patients fall a lot. They're in the emergency room a lot. And then last, if you add that all up, people aren't able to really take care of themselves, dress, bathe, do these things, activities of daily living. So the results from our study, I have to say, were very, very positive and so encouraging. 86% slowing of the behavioral psychiatric symptom, 86%. We also measured the caregivers. They were actually better at the end of the trial. The caregivers, because the person they were taking care of was obviously doing better. 85% slowing of cognitive decline, 52% preservation in activities of daily living. So if you can dress, bathe, and shower, you might not be able to go to the grocery store and get back. These are meaningful changes. And then last, 62% preservation in movement. So honestly, we thought that was a home run. That's for Lewy body dementia. Right. Briefly, in Alzheimer's disease, we read that study out over the summer. We refer to it as SHINE, mild to moderate disease. And our results were actually better than what we saw with monoclonal antibodies. We measure slowing of progression. So we slowed it by 39%, whereas Eisai and Lilly drugs, 25, 30%. As a reminder for the listeners, those are monoclonal antibodies. They're administered in an infusion center, and then patients need surveillance to look for brain bleeds. Our drug, once a day oral, really simple. We, in October, had new data, and we looked at a group of patients in that study. It was all pre-specified. We weren't digging through the data looking for something good. It was pre-specified. They had 95% slowing of disease. Can you imagine you have Alzheimer's disease and for 6 months, no change? Incredible. We found these patients through a commercially available test, p-tau 217. And so as we think about our phase 3 trial, we're thinking, how do we ensure that we get those patients in the study? So we're very pleased. We've been given great funding, and we feel like excellent trials were run. And look at the results. We're so excited about what we can do for patients in 2 pretty terrible conditions.
Yeah, they are terrible conditions, Lisa, but those numbers are incredible and just amazing work you guys are doing. And to dive a little deeper, what are the similarities and differences between Alzheimer's and DLB?
Great question. So one of the overlapping areas is in cognition, as it shows here. In Alzheimer's disease, that typically shows up first. People are confused, are not able to remember how to do things. It's not so much the case in DLB, but eventually these patients all have cognitive problems. The Lewy body patients are mostly known, as it indicates here, for some of the neuropsych challenges that they have, as well as the gait and falling kinds of things. Right. The truth is, the FDA knows a lot about Alzheimer's disease because there have been so many studies, not a lot of them successful, but lots of interaction. When it comes to Lewy body, we're all learning at the same time, and I would like to say Cognition is a real front runner, working with the FDA, working with key opinion leaders with the Lewy Body Dementia Association. It's such a grassroots thing, Dan. You will see elderly people, like in the UK, 85-year-old people who are spearheading all of the awareness around Lewy body disease. It's really a grassroots, from the heart kind of effort because it's just not that well known. And having a drug that works is going to change that.
Yeah, that community and kind of, just effort seems to really help things. And, as you kind of explained, DLB does seem quite different from how we think of other diseases like Alzheimer's.
Yes.
Do you have to design a study differently for DLB, Lisa?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when you look at these things that are on the screen here, they all have validated ways of measuring them. So for example, under movement, we used a score, it's written there, UDPRS, validated, standardized instrument. All doctors who treat Parkinson's disease patients are familiar with it. Same thing for the activities of daily living. You see that in Alzheimer's trials as well. Cognition, there were probably a dozen things we measured. Again, validated, same for the neuropsych. We wanted to do a study with the kind of rigor that no matter who was looking at the results, they would say, right, that is how you measure the change in this symptom category. The amazing thing was to hit on all of them, but it is quite different from Alzheimer's disease. That's true.
Sure. And Lisa, you appear to have a drug that works in two different diseases. As a small company, how do you move forward into phase 3? Will you have to pick one indication, or are you planning to develop the drug for each?
Yeah, no, great question. Thanks for asking that. Yes, we do have two bona fide indications. Right now, we're planning first to go to the FDA with our discussion around the end of phase 2 in Alzheimer's. Why are we doing that first? Because the study finished first last summer. Second, we'll go to the FDA and discuss DLB. We want to be prepared to run either of these trials, which is to say, have an approved protocol, and from there, endpoints we agree with the FDA. From there, we move on to how to fund it. Now, the truth is, Dan, we're in a pretty big partnering process right now, and it may be the case that a company that wants to work with us and that we want to work with says, oh no, we're doing DLB first, or we're doing Alzheimer's first. We're being prepared for both.
And what are your plans to eventually bring zervimesine to market, including the business development process that you have in place right now?
Oh, great question. Thank you.
That's the good ones, Lisa.
You asked only the good ones. Excellent. Yes, we have a pretty robust business development process. Let me back up and say, when I took over this company with my chief medical officer, the two of us made it our mission. We talked all the time to the companies working in neuroscience year after year. We had a little study, we had a big study, we'd call them up and get in front of them. And the whole point of that was for us to know their teams and for them to know the quality and rigor in this little tiny company. When you're a big pharmaceutical company, you look at us and you're like, who are those guys again? Those are the guys that do excellent studies. Right. And you know what? It was so valuable because now we're able to move very quickly through discussions. So that's what we're doing. Certainly a CEO, I cannot guarantee we're going to find a partner, secure a deal. I'll tell you what, I'm working very hard with my team to ensure that happens. We anticipate if we're able to sign a deal, there'll be a good amount of non-dilutive funding that might allow us to raise capital in the markets because people see that investor fallback for us. And from there, off to the races with phase 3. Now, once all that is secure, we've gotten to the FDA, we have a partner, we have funding, then we can talk about what you also asked, which is how do we commercialize this drug? All of that work begins well before launch, but we're not there yet. Thinking about it, but first things first.
Of course, got to take it one step at a time, and very exciting times ahead as it seems for you guys at Cognition. Can you tell us about your Q4 results? What does your balance sheet look like right now?
Yeah, we announced Q4 results a couple of weeks ago. We have $25 million in cash. That takes us to the fourth quarter of this year. In addition, a non-balance sheet item is grant funding. I mentioned we've had close to $200 million of funding. So we have a $50 balance that is available to us to finish our trial called START, and that's for patients that have early stage Alzheimer's disease. We funded all of our trials with grant funding. And again, how does a little company that's raised, frankly, the modest amounts of money we've raised do 5 trials? That's how you do it with those kinds of supportive grants. So $50 million for that, $25 million in cash. You know, That's what we have right now. Clearly, we need more to run phase 3, but we are thinking about how to do that.
Of course. And listen, you've gotten me very excited, but why should investors be excited by Cognition in 2025?
Great question. Again, you only ask the good ones. What we are thinking about is the following. We have some great catalysts. Get to the FDA to talk about what does phase 2, end of phase 2 look like? What is the study? How big? Where is it going to be conducted? US, international, how many doses? These are things we feel like investors and strategic partners really want to understand. So 2 very important catalysts in Alzheimer's and in Lewy body dementia. Another critical catalyst is our ability, if and when we get there, to announce a partnership, non-dilutive funding, maybe other sources of funding at that time. In the near term, I'd say over the next 6 months, we have really important things that will change the direction of this company. And what I really want, Dan, is for investors to look at Cognition and say, God, that's a $12 stock, or whatever they say, that they see the value in the work we do and in the excellent results we've generated and the top quality approach we have to clinical research. There's so much here. I want everyone else to see it.
So beautifully said, Lisa. It was an absolute pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for your time, and nothing but the best going forward.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot.